Hello and welcome to Art in the AM. My name is Jamie and I'm going to be doing my word of the week in my little watercolor journal here. If you were here last week, I started a series for this month all about art styles, just like my own made up art styles. They may kind of be similar to other art styles, but I just kind of like made these up. I am using the same image for all of the Mondays in September, and it is this lion. So I started last week. You can tell me if you watched last week. I just kind of started it last week, and as I started thinking about it, I probably should have done today's word last week because today is the word natural. Last week was realistic. And I'll tell you a little bit about the difference here, but this is the realistic lion that I started last week. Haven't finished it. Had lots of things going on last week with technology. And this week, I don't know if you can tell, but my eyes have been watering so bad this morning. I'm just going to go ahead and like turn my camera down because I just feel like they're just watering a lot. But I wanted you to see my good hair day that I'm having today. No, just kidding. I did get it done last week. But I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera down and I'm going to show you how I do a natural drawing. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about drawing today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera down so you're not seeing my like watery eyes. I had already put on makeup and then they started watering and I thought, well, that was kind of a waste for me to put on makeup. So here is the one that I started. I did a watercolor and colored pencils is what I was using last week. But this week I'm going to work on this one. I'm going to be working upside down, which I'm going to explain to you actually works for what I'm going to show you. So you may actually want to work upside down if you want to try this technique. I did go ahead and date all of the rest of the pages in my book here, and I have just enough pages left to finish out September. So this is the last Monday in September, and then I have one page left. So I would like your thoughts on what I should do with this last page because I don't want to start the month of October and only do one in here. I have this whole back page here, which is, like the back cover, but I'm going to have this extra page, and I'm just not sure exactly what I should do with this extra page. I thought about doing a table of contents, but it would be in the back of the book. So that doesn't exactly make sense. I need like an idea for what to do on this very last page. Then I will decide for the month of October, November, December, if I'm going to do another journal that would just be for those 3 months. That's probably what I'm going to do. I have another one of these. And so I have to kind of think about what I want to do there. But I think I just want to end this one with September. And then on this last full page, put something else here. I don't know. But let's go back to this one. So the word that I'm doing today is natural as far as an art style. And when I originally chose all of these words, I really don't know what I was thinking because natural and realistic are very similar. So I had to kind of look up. I'm moving all these things over here off my desk so I can lay my journal flat here. I had to kind of look up the difference between realistic and natural. So if you were going to define both of those, how would you define those differently? Like, what would you say the difference between natural and realistic is? So here is this page I'm going to be working on upside down. I put the lion kind of over on this side, and I'm going to be doing that on this one too. So the line is going to go, you know, kind of right here, and I'm just kind of fitting it right on the edge. Let me scoot over just a little bit more, just on the edge of the paper here. I'm going to be doing all pencil on this one, and I'm going to show you how to take an image. Hey there, Angie. I'm going to show you how to take this image and draw it freehand, no tracing today, show you how to draw it freehand the exact same size. And that's probably the easiest way to start if you have an image, to do it exactly the same size. It's a whole nother skill to be able to draw something and enlarge it or shrink it down, you know, to make it a different size. So I'm going to do exactly this same size. So this is a technique that I'm going to show to you. I think I've done it before here on my live videos, and I've showed it in groups and things like that, but I'm going to show you a grid method that has been used for hundreds and hundreds, thousands, no, I don't know if it's been thousands. I think it goes back to like 1400, so hundreds of years. And I'm trying to think, the artist that I remember first seeing that used it was Alfred, I think is the first name, Dürer. I think it was a Dutch artist. Anyway, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, probably all of them. I'm sure Da Vinci used it, but it is using a grid method. So the first thing that I kind of need to do is put the grid on this piece of paper. And I'm going to be using, instead of a pencil, I'm going to, not my Sharpie, I'm going to use my friction pen, because if you saw a couple of weeks ago, I used this friction pen and my little heat tool, and it like goes away when I use the heat tool. So let's see, this book is 6.5 inches. So I'm going to do a 1-inch grid, because I have this piece of plastic that is a 1-inch grid. So I'm going to, you know, it's not going to fit exactly, but I'm going to start in the corner, do a 1-inch grid over. If you really want to get better at drawing, I would definitely suggest this technique for you. When I was teaching high school students, we taught them this technique. We taught them how to do a grid on their paper, and they drew out the grid, and then we had them draw in pencil. So these were pencil portraits of themselves as a baby. And I will tell you what, they were just amazed really at how well they did with these drawings using this grid method. Now, if you were doing this in a pencil, I would just say to use a really, really light pressure. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pencils and the different types of pencils. I have all of my pencils here in a little cup, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pencils. Okay, so I have all the lines going vertically, and then I'm going to come over here and do the horizontal lines. Let me think about which way this grid. Yeah, so I'm going to do, yeah, I'm just going down that way. If you saw, what I did is when I drew this line to show like where, you know, I matched up the corners of this, so I made it perpendicular, right? And then when I drew this line over here, it was perpendicular and parallel, you know, it was parallel to this line and perpendicular to this line. I always try to use like corners like this or the corner of my ruler, because when people say they can't even draw a straight line, that means usually that they can't draw a straight line that is parallel and perpendicular. Because even with the ruler, you can draw a straight line, But if you're trying to draw a grid like this, the lines need to be parallel and perpendicular. And then I measure twice. So I go all the way over to the left-hand side, all the way over to the right-hand side, and I'm just making little tiny tick marks at the 1 inch mark. And then what I can do is I can line those up, and this ruler should be 1 inch wide, and I think that it's pretty close. I feel like I'm off a little bit over here. Maybe just a little bit. But I'm going to use the measurements on there and just kind of use the paper as kind of a guide on there. And then and I can use the end of the ruler there too. So I'm gonna kind of do that. And yeah, the ruler must not be exactly 1 inch. It must be a little bit wider than 1 inch. And these don't necessarily need to be perfect, but when I show you the other little tool that we're going to use, you want it pretty close. You want these little squares to be like 1 inch squares. And when I get all finished, I'll be able to just take my heat tool and just get rid of these lines here. So I have this 1 inch grid, but there's a little bit extra on these sides because the size of this image, but it matches up to this grid. Fairly close. Matches up to this grid right here that I have on this. Now you can take, I just have this piece of, what do they call it, acetate, this piece of plastic. Sometimes these come in between pieces of canvas. I've noticed when I get these like at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, one of them has these. So I just cut this down so it was like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But I have seen where people, like if I didn't want to use this for anything else, and if I just wanted to put the grid on top of this piece of paper, you can also do that. So if I made a copy of this in black and white, which actually is very helpful to just have the black and white, you could just do this grid right on the piece of paper. But what I'm going to be doing is just kind of laying it over top of this. The other thing that you need to do this method, besides the pencils, an eraser, and just your image, that kind of thing, is you need a viewfinder. This viewfinder will help you to see only the 1 inch square. And that is definitely one of the tips that will kind of flip so that you start using the more creative side of your brain, the right side of your brain, the one that, I want to say speaks, but that's not exactly, but the one that uses more of the artistic language of lines and shapes and values and colors and all of those elements and principles of art that I taught earlier in the year in the word of the week. So this little viewfinder is one of the ways that you can force your brain to see just lines and shapes, because you're not going to see the whole lion in this little square, right? You're only going to see what's inside that square, which is going to be probably lines and shapes. In one of them, you may see the eyeball, but that might be the only thing that you can like really name. So having your image upside down, drawing it upside down, will help flip that switch. And having this little viewfinder, having the grid, the viewfinder, turning it upside down, all of these little tips that I'm showing to you today will help you so that I don't have to have the grid now. I've done enough drawing, enough looking at an image and drawing it the same size. I can enlarge things. And it's because I started by using this little grid method. So I'm going to have the lion over here with this grid on top, and I will try to put it like right here so you can kind of see side by side. And if the grid is enough, then you don't even need the viewfinder, but I want to show you how I'm going to use that. So if I go to this corner here, which is this corner, and I put my viewfinder, there's nothing in there for me to draw. So I know there's not going to be anything in that square there. If I move it over, it's very hard to see, but there's just the tiniest little bit of hair, of lines, of values. Now, if I had this in black and white, you'd really be able to see that, right? So if I have just that little viewfinder, just that little piece, and I am going to start, here's the thing about pencils. I love to use my ebony pencil. This is a really soft lead, and it has a lot of graphite in there. It has a lot of the graphite that makes something dark. So I can get a really dark value with this. And if I don't press down really hard, it gives me a pretty light line. So I have learned how to control this ebony pencil, and I kind of like to use it for everything. However, I do have a set of, I'll say, art pencils, and they're all these ones with, I think that's all of them, this gray tip here. I have several ebony pencils in there. They have these gray tips. And if you look at graphite pencils, at drawing pencils, they all have a label on there. So this one is a 3H. This one is a 6B, an HB. So they all have the little symbol there, a 2B, and a 5B. So you're like, what do those mean? What does that mean? Yes, Marion, I was surprised. It is a Prismacolor ebony pencil. Thank you, because I know they're backwards. I used Prismacolors last week. So the labels that are on these describe how hard or soft the lead is. So you can imagine that the H stands for hard. And if I was going to use an H pencil, so I have a 3H, and I probably have a 2H somewhere, but I don't see it in here. The 3H is probably one of the hardest leads that I have. And it is going to make, it has less graphite in there. So this is going to make a really light line. I have found, however, though, if I press down too hard with these, they make an indentation in my paper that I can't get rid of. So I do have to use really light pressure. And with the H, since it's hard, it's going to make a really light line. So I may use this H for some of the areas that are a little bit lighter. And then as I get to the B, so like I have a 6B, this is the opposite. Like if I had a range, I've got the hardest pencil and this is the softest pencil. And you can even see how this is a really hard lead and this one just looks softer. I mean, yeah, it's not sharpened as much, but the lead, there's more graphite in it. And that is the range from a 3H to a 6B. And then these, the HB is kind of right in the middle. And this is an HB is usually what like a regular like yellow pencil, a school pencil is, right? So that's kind of like in the middle. So I have a 3H, the HB is in the middle, and then the 6B. And then you got the other ones. I've got a 5B, so it's going to be really close. It's a pretty soft lead. And then I have a 2B. I really like the softer leads quite a bit. If I'm doing some really light kind of details, then I might use an H. Wanda says, when she was a kid, our local Sunday paper had a picture with the grid over it. Oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember the grid. I remember the, wasn't it a turtle that they had in the paper? So if I look at this, there's just like this little kind of right in just the edge there. And then if I move it over, now I have a little bit more in there, and I can tell it kind of goes from this corner to this corner. And what I'm doing is just constantly like looking back and forth. I don't remember if there's a name for the B, or if they just like assign a B as the letter. Yeah, the H I always think of for the hard graphite. Yeah, the turtle, and then wasn't there a little pirate? I kind of remember a pirate. And then if I look at this one, there's a dark area too, so I could, kind of draw in that dark area. And now I have that. And if I go over here, this one is really light. And there's a little bit of a darker value in there. And right here, then it matches up with what was in the square before it. And if you do a grid like this, it's really, hi there, Sandy. It's really easy to walk away from it. You don't feel like you have to have, all of the drawing done. Then if I go over to this last square over here, there's nothing in that one. So then I come down to here. It almost becomes like a puzzle fitting all of the pieces together. And it's another reason why drawing upside down is helpful. So like I can look at this and see where this dark value is right about in the middle, right? So you could even grid down, your 1-inch grid even smaller. Or you can just, a lot of people will use their pencil to measure, right? And if I kind of come over here and measure, so you can do, you can kind of do that too. So if I decided to go down to this one, then where this starts should match up with what I just did in the one right above it. And I can kind of see this almost goes straight down. It's a little bit at an angle. And then there's this darker value in here. Tell me if you've ever used this grid method. Wanda was saying that she used it for... I've used this so many different times. Profiles. You can do any kind of drawing that you want using this grid method. If you want to draw a face, this is the best way. This is the best way to feel like you're getting all of the details, and you're not getting so hung up on the eye. And Sandy says 7th grade. That's awesome. Great. Sue said that she's used it too. So I'm already down to this bottom square here, the bottom full square. And this one doesn't have any like outside lines, like the outline of what it is that I'm drawing, but there are a lot of different values in there. So I just look at the shapes that I'm doing with the values, and that's how I, kind of decide what it is that I want to draw in there. And I'm not putting like every single little detail. I'm just kind of getting the idea of where everything is, but you could draw all of those little pieces of hair. I'm just kind of going for the shape that's in there. And this little tiny piece right down here, I would almost want to have, you know, something else like this to cover up, right? So I'm really only drawing just that top little piece of that square. But I have used this method enough. Usually I don't draw the grid anymore, and I don't have to have something to cover it up. But if you have not used something like this before, really all of the rest of this is pretty dark, so I'm really only going to do that, just like that one little piece. And then maybe I would come back up to here. And I know this is part of an ear, but when I look at this, I'm going to see if I can get it a little bit closer. When I look at it, it's just a shape. Let me see if I can get it a little bit closer so you can kind of see. You know, I'm looking at this like little curve there, and just kind of getting that curve. And I can use my pencil to measure, you know, it comes that far out away, and I'm a little too far right there, so I can come in and, you know, kind of refine that. I'm using the 3H pencil, and I'm not going to do any of the little inside there, but this darker shape now that I have here starts to connect in with the other little shape. So my eyes, if you didn't see the beginning, they're watering so bad right now. So I don't think that I'm probably going to finish this, but I just wanted you to see where this line starts to come across and it connects in with what I've already drawn over there. So I already kind of have the top part of the lion. I have this ear where I've started. And what I'll end up doing is using that grid to draw the rest of the lion in there. And I'll probably take the pencils once my eyes aren't watering, and, you know, kind of just kind of get like some of the darker values. Like I'll probably use my ebony pencil for some of the darker areas that are, you know, kind of like around here, kind of in here, and some of the softer I actually like all of the softer ones, but I know that there are going to be some places in here where I want like the little details, and I want some lighter, you know, just kind of like the his fur, his whiskers, you know, some things like that, some areas around the eye, and then some of the darker, the harder, not harder, the darker graphite, like, you know, kind of in the center of the ear and things like that. So that's what I'm going to work on with this one, and this is going to be the natural. And I told you I was going to give you kind of like the difference between natural and realistic. Like I said, I probably would have started with this one if I would have like thought about it, but a natural art style, or if you're thinking about, you know, just a natural style, is more like accurate. It's more accurate to what it is that you're seeing. It's more accurate to just the details. But the difference between natural and realistic, natural really emphasizes like the natural beauty, the you know, and nature. Like there is some, you know, little grass or whatever down in here, but it emphasizes nature and just like the natural beauty. Whereas realistic might have it's realistic in a sense of it being, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to look at. However, it might not necessarily be beautiful, right? Have you ever seen things that they're realistic, but they might not be beautiful. You know, I've seen artwork where I can appreciate the detail of how realistic it is, but it might be like not beautiful to me, right? Whereas the natural style emphasizes the beauty in things. So that's kind of like the little difference. And I just decided to do this one in pencil, and then this one I will finish out with the colored pencil. And I will probably do something a little bit to lighten this background, because I feel like right now it's kind of competing with this right here. So I think I'll probably lighten that. But I'm going to go ahead and take a break because my eyes are just watering really bad today. But I did want to tell you, I didn't get this all ready for today, but in 2 weeks is September 22nd. And in 2 weeks, that is a very special day. And I'm going to do something starting that day that I've never done before. I'll get it all together. You'll probably see a post. And if you want to join me, it is going to be something for the last 100 days of the year. The last 100 days. And that starts on September 22nd. So stay tuned for that. I will probably create an event for that. And if you want to join me, I will tell you more about it. I just didn't get it all ready for today because my eyes were just watering so bad. So I apologize for that. But thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being a part of my word of the week that I've been doing, and just trying a lot of different techniques and just showing, you know, some of the different things. I haven't finished this one yet with I want to do some faces on here for community, and just showing some different things about composition. And I've done all of these different words and different techniques in here. And these videos are all on YouTube. If you are on my email list, you get the replay of all of these, and you can just, you know, kind of watch one after the other. I try to keep them to about 35 to 40 minutes so that you can kind of go through. But each one of the weeks, I've tried something a little different, talking about the words, and just it ends up being this book of all of these different techniques and fun little ideas that I can then come back to and, you know, remember some of the things that I've done in here and use some of the ideas for maybe another piece of artwork. And I think that's one of the great things about having a sketchbook, a little practice book like this, is you can try things and figure things out before you may take it to a bigger piece of artwork. And it just ends up being this resource of all of these different ideas, as I'm kind of flipping through all the pages here, and just inspiration for all the different things. This is the other one that I did upside down, I talked about last week. And just gives you different ideas for what you might be able to use to incorporate into something bigger. And that is the very, I think I did leave this first page to do maybe like a table of contents. I still need an idea for this very last full page that I'm going to do, that I'll have in here, which would be the very last page in the book and the first week in October. So I think it's going to be a fun little reference book. And then I will decide what to do for the month of October, November, and December for my words of the week that I have planned. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all of your comments. I'm going to go back and read those and all of your ideas about using the grid method. I love to see that you tried a lot of different styles and ways of creating, because I think that's what helps you to keep your mind just thinking in a creative way. So thank you so much for being here, and I am going to go rest my eyes a little bit, and I will see you next week with the next word of the week. And stay tuned for that event that I was talking about for that last 100 days. Have something special planned for that. So I'll be creating an event, making a post, and you'll see that probably before next Monday. So be on the lookout for that.